when it comes to Hugo Lloris as well, it's going to be quite interesting as well, because as far as I'm aware, Antonio Conte has come in and pretty much essentially been like, what has been allowed to happen to Hugo Lloris? Because you look at it, Hugo Lloris is Spurs' most decorated player. He's probably their most consistent player over recent years. His contract ends in 6 months' time, just over. He will be able to, next month, speak to foreign clubs about leaving on a free transfer in the summer. How? How has that been allowed to happen? It is, Hugo Lloris' last contract was 5 years ago. 5 years ago. And it had no option for an extra season. It was a 5.5-year deal, which takes us up to the summer of 2022. And just in the meantime, where I believe there's been a couple of offers made to him, just nothing really suitable. The biggest problem at Tottenham they've had this policy, and other clubs do it. I think Chelsea do it as well. There's been a real reluctance to give big contracts to anyone over 30. Spurs' profile is very much about building from young players, turning into stars, etc. So when players turn 30, there's always been this reluctance to give them any more than maybe a year's contract with an option for another on top, and not normally for big money. Whereas Hugo Lloris obviously will be looking at him and thinking, I'm a World Cup winner. I'm probably the one winner in your team. I'll be incredibly consistent. One of the best goalkeepers in the world, probably, top 10, top 15 goalkeepers in the world. And you're not going to pay me what I deserve, or like an improved contract kind of thing. So that contract has just remained as is. And now we're at this stage where I understand there's still no formal offer on the table from Tottenham as he approaches, a few weeks before he can talk. I think it's January the 1st he can talk to other clubs, foreign clubs. So Conte has come in, and from what I'm led to believe, immediately impressed with Lloris. Sees a kindred spirit, sees someone who is a winner. We all remember what he said after the collapse in Zagreb. He tore Tottenham apart. And essentially, and this was a guy who, everything is normally done behind the scenes with Lloris. He's a very good talker behind the scenes, very, calm, calculated, mature guy. But he came out that night in Zagreb and essentially said it's rotten. Everything stinks. The mentality is just not what it was in this club. And it was exactly what Conte believes in, everything. And yeah, I understand it. He's come in and he rates Lloris very highly. And although he told us on Friday that he hasn't spoken yet to Lloris about his contract, I'm led to believe that behind the scenes he's making it very clear that he wants Lloris to stay. I think for Lloris now, turns 35 on Boxing Day. He's not declining at all. I can't see it. I think reflexes-wise, he's still superb. Obviously made an early save against Norwich. He had a little iffy kick moment when Dyer gave him the ball in a real rubbish position. But I think overall, I'd say Lloris has, again, had a very consistent season. I do wonder whether the elbow injury he had against Brighton it was towards the end of 2019, wasn't it? It was kind of as the Poch era was unravelling. I just wonder whether the months he had out, he came back in January, didn't he? I just wonder whether those months kind of reset his career, just recharged him. He pretty much played almost every game for Spurs. And I just feel like, I wonder whether that just gave him a pause and let his body heal and let everything... Because I think since that moment he came back, he's probably played some of the best football of his career as a goalkeeper. And for me, it's incredible. I can't see the logic of Spurs not having pushed to get him signed up. Because, Galini was brought in last summer with the potential of becoming a successor. I'd say, I don't think Lloris is ready to be succeeded yet. And I'd also say Galini is yet to prove himself. He hasn't really shone. He obviously had the penalty save against Wolves in the Carabao Cup, but he hasn't really... Maybe, it could be fair and say he hasn't had the opportunity so much to do that. But to say he's on a similar level or able to succeed Lloris, I think it's too premature. So I'm intrigued to see what happens now, because Spurs are hopeful that they'll get something agreed. and he will commit to a longer stay. He's spoken in the past about wanting to go back to France and see out his career there. I think Nice is the club he wanted to go back to. There's been talk about the MLS as well and a move there at some point. But I'd say that, he's 34 now, it's 35 at the end of this month. I don't think he's at the stage now where he can even start winding his career down. I think he's that fit, he's that higher level. I think he could be one of these goalkeepers that plays probably into his 40s. I think he can. I just think it needs to get sorted because Conte wants it. This is what I'm saying. I think, I spoke about the 30 contracts for over 30s. I think the problem was Spurs changed this mentality with Toby Alderweireld and Moussa Sissoko. They gave them both, I think, 3-year deal for Alderweireld. It was a 4-year maybe, and a 4-year deal in total for Sissoko as well. And they got burned by that. Alderweireld and Sissoko have both now left the club for nominal fees. It's a difficult one because you could probably argue neither felt like the wrong decision at the time, but in hindsight, they ended up paying a lot more to players who then they had to shift, and obviously were on higher or big wages that made it difficult to then move them on for anything other than a low fee. So I wonder whether getting burned by that, Daniel Levy, whether that's maybe influenced, what's happened with Hugo Lloris, but I just feel it's different. It's a different case. Special case goalkeepers are. I know I can see people on social media. I've got various people saying, name them. Who are the players? And look, if you know me and you know the way I work, I respect kind of medical privacy when I report stuff. So I'm really sorry. If you come on here looking for the names, I'm not going to say who the names are because unless, you saw, let's say, Brentford, Ivan Toney tested positive and he was happy for that clearly to go out there and it was put out there. With Tottenham, or certainly with different players, people have different views on it, whether they want their medical kind of records, whatever, to be out there. It's a different thing. And currently there's no indication that that's the case, so I'm not going to be kind of going into names and stuff. I don't like that side of things. What I would say, for those who are really desperate to know, tomorrow, Wednesday, they'll be doing open training, which normally would be, I don't know if it's a UEFA regulation that you have to do it or not, but that would be live streamed. So you'll be able to see who's training. Out of interest to anyone that's wondering, our press conference tomorrow, which was going to be in person with Antonio Conte and a player, is now going to be over Zoom again, which is understandable. You're not going to see me banging on the windows at Hotspur going, let me in. I get it. I wouldn't want new people or outside people coming into a training centre when you're trying to contain and make sure nothing else happens. I get that. And obviously Thursday night, if the game goes ahead, it will be pretty clear, won't it, who's not in the squad. But yes, as for me reporting it, unless certain players make that public themselves or want to make that public, I'm not going to do it because it's one of the expressions that we often use in journalism is whether it's in the public interest, and it's not enough to go against someone's medical request, I guess it is, or privacy.